secrets to being a good tabletop crafter is seeing things not necessarily as they are, but for what they might be. Hi, and welcome to another episode of TheGameSmith, the first episode for Series 3 that is focusing on what we're calling water accessories, which is just a fancy way of saying that we're going to be making terrain that is above the surface of the water and below the surface of the water. And we're going to be starting with coral, so let's head to the table. The basis of our coral terrain begins with these scrubbing pads from the dollar store. They come in several colors and are very cheap, so you can experiment with them. Next, the basing material I've chosen for this build is chipboard, which is highly compressed cardboard, which makes it flexible and durable. Now my plan is to create different size scatter structures, and I want to use two different sizes, a 2-inch base and a 3-inch base. These reference large and huge size creatures. It's easy enough to mark out a 2-inch grid system on the chipboard. As you can see, each of these are a 2-inch or 5 centimeter square. Likewise, I can also measure out 3-inch squares, or roughly 7.5 centimeters. Now I'm a big fan of measure twice and cut once, so I'll cross out the lines I don't want to cut on and checkmark those I do. Cutting chipboard is an easy task as long as you have a sharp utility knife. If you don't have any chipboard, any other material could easily be used as a base. Single-ply cardboard, foam board, corrugated cardboard, even plastic lids would work well. I like chipboard because it's inexpensive, durable, and easy to cut into unique shapes. And of course, it's completely recyclable. I have this circle template that I can compare my base to, and then I can trace out a circle on the chipboard. Obviously, I could just as easily trace out the round base, but I think my hands would be in the way of the camera, so I'm using the template instead. Now all we have to do is cut this, and like I said, cutting chipboard is pretty easy. I've seen a lot of other tabletop crafters on YouTube use this material. In fact, I think it's Wylock's favorite building material. Now depending on the material that you chose, you may want to weigh down the base. If that's the case, I suggest using large washers. They are very cheap and you can glue them quite easily. However, because the scrubbing pads aren't very heavy, I'm not terribly worried about the bases tipping over. Now we're going to be using some tin foil in order to cover our chipboard bases. I've cut these squares ahead of time in order to wrap them around our bases. We want to crumple the tin foil and flatten it out. We want to use the tin foil as texture to simulate our ocean or sea bottom. We can use any glue, but hot glue bonds the quickest. Just be careful of the glue. I understand the average temperature of hot glue is about 250 degrees Celsius. That's about 480 degrees to our American cousins. Make sure you get your glue, whatever type you're using, right up to the edge. If you find that I'm being a bit repetitive through my videos, I apologize, but it's only because most of my life I've been an educator. I want to treat each video like a new experience for the absolute novice crafter. Well, perhaps not each video, but most. Case in point, we just repeat everything we just did for our large base. Next, I want to paint the base with a mixture of Mod Podge and dark gray paint. The Mod Podge will help bond the acrylic paint to the tin foil. I have a batch of leftover 60/40 Mod Podge from a previous build. I'm also going to use this old beat-up brush since it really isn't delicate work. Now in the event that you didn't know, Mod Podge is formulated not only to be a glue like PVA, but it's also a paint medium. The easiest way to think of a medium is it's a colorless paint. The medium will adopt the color of whatever pigment is added to it, without actually changing the tint of the color. Okay, enough color theory stuff. Let's move on to the next step. Now we're going to use our plastic scrubbing pads. I think I'm going to use the red scrubbing pad to start with. We're also going to be using our now dry large and huge bases. And you're going to want to heat up your glue gun. To start, we want to cut our scrubbing pad in half. You're going to end up with all these little plastic fragments, so make sure that you're in an easy to clean area. I like to clip the large fragments off so that I can use them later. Now I'll size out the plastic pad compared to the size of the base. We want to press the two ends of our pad together in order to create a balloon-like shape. Then we wrap a rubber band around the base and pinch the two ends together. Then we put a large dollop of hot glue in the middle of our huge base. The glue should be about 3 centimeters or an inch in diameter. Next, we want to press our shaped scrubbing pad into the hot glue and hold it there tightly. Then with a wide craft stick, you want to press down and drag the plastic away from the center of the base. Doing this will stretch out the plastic around the base and give it an organic root-like appearance. I'll even add some extra hot glue in order to help the process along. I'll add some of the plastic clippings to the base in order to improve the effect. When you're satisfied with the shape of the coral, you can remove the rubber band. After the rubber band is off, the scrubbing pad will expand over time. I think I'll add a bit more hot glue to the middle and hold it down for just a few seconds. Here's a close-up of the scrubbing pad before it's expanded back to its original shape. Afterwards, you can remove any of the plastic tendrils hanging off the side as you see fit. My goal here is to create an organic-looking, growing shape. Now we have this large piece of scrubbing pad that we cut off, and when I unravel it, you can see this wonderful lattice texture inside. The plastic will hold its shape, so we can actually roll it back up into a tube. Now I'll cut the ends off. Next, I'll cut the lattice tube in half. Now we can take the other half of the scrubbing pad and remove some of the outer layer. And just like before, we can re-roll the plastic lattice into a tube. We can remove the ends and cut the tube in half. Now I'll plan out how I'm going to arrange my new coral tubes on the base. Then, just as we did with the huge base, we add hot glue to the center. And carefully press one end of the plastic tubes into the hot glue. We can shape the bottoms of the tube, which will actually direct how the tube sits on the base. We can also clean away the errant tendrils in order to clean up the appearance. Now we have 2 coral scatter pieces completed. I suggest that you work on this build in bulk. I talk about this idea at length in the 5 scatter terrain hacks video. I'll put the link in the top right corner for you. Now that all the glue is dry and hard, I want to add just a few touch-ups with the Mod Podge and paint mixture. All I want to do is cover up the unsightly globs of hot glue and the tin foil that ended up being exposed. Without the Mod Podge, the paint would eventually separate from the tin foil and create all kinds of issues. After these dry, we can move on to the last step. For our final stage, I want to use this Ocean Breeze color from Craftsmart. It's kind of a turquoise color, which I really like for this build. And using this paint, we're actually going to overbrush our base rather than dry brush it. Overbrushing creates a more solid and colorful appearance, whereas dry brushing creates a dusty appearance. To overbrush, we need only lightly load our brush and then remove any of the excess paint. Then we drag the brush parallel to the surface we want to color. There's a bit more of an explanation in our foundations video on dry brushing. I'll put a link in the top right corner for you. And there we have our finished coral scatter terrain.
Now, as a note to all you enterprising GMs out there, I've really fired up my imagination engine on this, as it were, and I plan on creating a whole series of spells and magic items that are centered on the use of coral. Altering existing spells like Wall of Stone and Stone Shape just by substituting the word coral for stone will actually help me build a whole repertoire of spells that already exist in whatever game that I happen to be using at the time. Now, I understand that coral is in fact a plant and not stone, which just opens up more avenues for creating spells that I can substitute the word plant for coral in them. I hope you find this informative and inspiring.
This is our first episode on our water accessories here at the GameSmith, and there'll be many more. Since there are thousands of varieties of coral in the real world, I want to make a few different types of videos covering these wondrous plants. Not only could we use these plants underwater, but also underground as fungi, or as some bizarre Fey-type plant. If you'd like to support what we're doing here at the GameSmith, please hit the subscribe button. If you're already a subscriber, please hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment. You might also check out our blog at thegamesmith.org. We post the building materials for all our crafts on our website too. You might also check us out on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. Until next time, I'll see you at the table.